Okay, let's maybe start. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you very much and to welcome all of you on behalf of Caritas Europa. For those who don't know me, I'm Eva Reina. I'm Policy and Advocacy Director at Caritas Europa. And we are very happy to host this first webinar that we are organizing for policy and advocacy leads and coordinators of the Caritas Europa network. Though, of course, we are very happy to maybe welcome as well among the participants colleagues from the Caritas Confederation interested in this topic of participatory advocacy. Maybe just to, more people are joining to tell you a little bit about the event. So it's the first webinar that we're organizing with this idea of advocacy strategies, how to better support the advocacy mission of Caritas in general, how to do advocacy, how to be more impactful in the current context, which I think is not a mystery. It's quite challenging due to different trends and different issues that we are witnessing in Europe and, of course, the more global level. So this space actually is intended for open a discussion, for bringing ideas and to see how we can learn from each other and how we can actually improve the way that we do advocacy for the people that we serve. We created an informal group within Caritas Europa of policy and advocacy leads and coordinators. We started last year bringing together people that are interested in this topic across the European network of Caritas. And we had several polls, several consultations and discussions to try to figure out what are the topics and the areas in which we should open discussions and have spaces for interaction. And this was one of the topics that was identified. This is why we chose to talk about participatory advocacy and how to involve people with lived experience in our advocacy work. There will be another webinar foreseen this year at the end towards, I think it's on the 16th of October, if I'm not mistaken. That will be also related to tactics, innovation in advocacy, and how we better reach our targets in terms of impact on policy making. But at the same time, at Caritas Europa, we have at the moment a process as well of understanding how we can be more effective and more proactive as well and more successful in involving people with experienced poverty in our advocacy work at the European level, which, as you can imagine, is even more complicated because the further you go from the grassroots, the more difficult it is actually to involve the voices of people that we serve. So this is a bit the context, and I'm very glad that there's been a lot of interest, I would say. We have now like more than 40 participants, so this is very good. And we have a very interesting program foreseen for you today. And of course, since this is the first webinar, we will also disseminate an evaluation at the end to understand how we did in terms of organizing this webinar and how we can improve future webinars. But that will come as a follow-up of this webinar. We have tried to first we will go first through the testimonial and the expertise of Daniela Alba, who will tell us to bring more like a personal note and also her professional experience as an advocacy expert. And then we will bring back the focus to more like concrete examples from the Caritas Europa network with some input from our colleagues from Caritas Spain and Caritas Germany on how actually they involve people experiencing poverty and exclusion in their advocacy work. So without further I'm going to give the floor to Daniela Alba, but first I would like to tell you that we are recording this webinar. So keep that in mind. It's of course important if you want to go back to see what has been discussed, but also maybe to share with colleagues that were not able to participate. And normally we have put muted you by default to avoid disruptions. But in case it's not working, please make sure that you are muted. But of course, we will give you the floor for the question and answer session. And you were free also to ask questions or to share your comments on the chat. So I'll give the floor then to Daniela Alba. Thank you, Daniela, for joining us. She's going to give us what I'm sure a very interesting keynote and a very exciting one. Daniela, she's working as advocacy coordinator at the Social Justice and Ecology Secretariat. So please, Daniela, take the floor. It's yours.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'd just like to say that it's an honor to be here with you guys, but it's also a huge irony because one of the first jobs that I ever applied for within this sector was actually with Caritas Italiana. And I'll never forget it. The sister who was interviewing me told me, I don't think you're fit to be in this sector. For as much experience and as much life that you've lived, you don't have what it takes to do this work. And so now, almost 6 years later, I think it's interesting to be back here. It's like a full circle moment. And so I start with that reflection because I think sometimes life takes you places and sometimes the words of people can be very much projections. And I think we live in a moment where the polarizing way in which we talk about things can lead us to make broad assumptions about the person in front of us. And this is where participatory advocacy is key. So I just want to start really quickly by greeting each and every one of you in my mother tongue, Chuamibzine. I speak Muisca Kubun, which is the native tongue of the Muisca people of what is now known as Bogota, Colombia. And I want to start my intervention also by asking permission of the Hishaguaya, or the Mother Earth, to speak. Our elders and wisdom holders, also known as Mamos, teach us that we are because she is, and that must be recognized at every point. So I cannot speak without recognizing our shared source of life, water, air, everything that we live in. And I want to thank all of you for your presence and the work that you do. It gives me great joy to share this space because it's an opportunity to learn and grow, a lifelong journey that I'm particularly a very big fan of. I also want to start by acknowledging my positionality. Because I believe that it is a privilege to be a woman of color who holds lived experience of displacement, human trafficking, child sexual abuse, but who has been granted the once in a lifetime opportunity to have healing in a holistic sense, psychological, but also medical, but also the accompaniment of those around me. And I say this because I often see us tokenized. So we're asked to come and speak on behalf of an entire group of people. And I just want to say that I do not speak for all forcibly displaced women. I do not speak on behalf of all indigenous peoples of Latin America. I do not speak on behalf of all survivors of sexual abuse or human trafficking. I simply can offer my humble contribution, and I hope that we can keep that in mind. I think that we are given spaces to speak, but hardly ever actively included at tables where decisions are about us are being made. And I hope that this can also be a lesson that can help us to think of more creative ways. I also wish not to be the exception within my own community. I wish for all migrant women, indigenous folks, and including our non-binary relatives to have access to opportunity to things like education, which I hold, the safety that I live in, and the equity in the conversations such as this, the reciprocity. As I deliver these words to you, my mother is surviving the war in Lebanon. Every morning, I wake up with the dread of receiving the message that she has been killed in a bombing or made one more victim of an ongoing violence that is plaguing the region. Conversely, my siblings remain split for visa reasons in the US and in Colombia, where our identities are heavily politicized and marginalized, and especially where my father's family in Colombia has fought for the preservation of our territories for over 550 years since the start of the 1500s colonization. I cannot act and I will not act as if everything is okay, because it is not. And as a fundamental part of effective advocacy is speaking uncomfortable truths to power for those who have been silenced purposefully and forcibly by the systems that we uphold and that guarantees our daily safety and our ability to have even the most basic needs such as connection to the internet now. To humanize the conversation is fundamental and is a fundamental starting point to speak about what advocacy even is and looks like in this geopolitical climate. One of the many wounds of institutionalized colonial practices and socioeconomic marginalization, which continues to make it difficult to have our voices heard, platformed, and even considered, is the normalization of our suffering and the overuse of the word resilience when it comes to our survival. I am tired of people telling me that they admire me and they think I am resilient. I know that. I have no choice. But that should not be the reality. And it shouldn't be the reality of the people that we serve. It is not normal and it shouldn't exist. I do not say this to invite pity. I say this to shed light on a reality of the world that we live in and that many of us profit from. So I'm grateful for this opportunity and to see that more of us can be invited into these spaces. With this being said, I want to highlight a couple of the following points on what I believe humbly can be a contribution towards effective participatory advocacy. I would like to mention specifically that there are historical viewpoints that should be reconsidered. I believe that part of what has allowed us to get to this point and to many of times buy into the fake news, or especially the people we serve, to buy into the divisory rhetoric that we are bombarded with through social media, through political jargon, and through propaganda, is that colonization has rendered our systems of knowledge narrow. What I mean by that is that someone with a PhD is entitled to speak on behalf of my people, but someone like my grandmother, who has never stepped out of the territory due to the normalization of vilification of our indigenous lives in Colombia, has never been able to speak about the decades and millennia that she embodies, her knowledge of our territory, and the history that no one should be allowed to speak for us when we are able to speak for ourselves. Within the conquest of the Abya Yala, now known as South America in the 15th century, often indigenous cosmologies and ways of learning were treated as pagan, superstitious, and vile. This fractured the threads that could have woven a more holistic approach between spiritual life, care for the land, and social justice. The encounters that were had, for example, with the Muisca people, my ancestors, and the Spanish conquistadors have a complex and not monolithic end to them. We must keep this in mind when making blanket statements about history. For example, I would like to cite that many historians, such as Jorge Augusto Gamboa Mendoza, who is the author of El Cacicajo Muisca en los años posteriores a la conquista, or the leadership of the Muiscas in the years posterior to the conquest, he speaks of the accepted version of events that had been given to the world. And he also cites how Gonzalo Jimenez de Quesada, who is one of the first people who encountered us during the conquest, challenges the rhetoric that we were gullible people who gave away our territories, because this is a highly colonized read on history. I cite this because I'm thinking of the brothers and sisters throughout Europe who have the same sort of rhetoric spoken about them, most notably the Sami people in Sweden, Finland, Norway, the Basque in Spain, the Kalakit in Greenland, but also the Roma and the Romani populations that to this day, many of them are not even considered part of Europe or even part of the inherited indigenous populations of this territory. But I think what many historians can agree on, and even Columbus writes about in his personal journals, is to the level of societies that we had, the highly developed constructs that still survive today, that our ancestors had, unimaginable feats of engineering never seen before. The examples you all know very well: Machu Picchu, Ciudad Perdida, Chichen Itza. And the story continues of the reciprocity with the land, even as we hold our strong roots and our cosmologies in our way of education and transmission of knowledge. In the case of us, our grandparents weave necklaces such as these and teach us how to tell stories through our weaving. Not everything has to be written, published, or discussed during a defense of a doctoral thesis. I want to here add that we also do well to remember, as a faith-based organization, that Roman Catholicism is born of a need to expand the Roman Empire with the Emperor Constantine's convenient conversion. As to where early Christian communities in the region of what we now know as the Middle East often trace their spirituality to their relationship with the land. Many indigenous groups, the Sephardic Jews of Palestine and Judea, the Druze and Maronites of present-day Lebanon, the Chaldean Christians in modern-day Iraq, the Coptic Christians in Egypt, Masr, as well as the Sunni and Sufi Muslims in different part of what is now Turkey and Morocco, had early beginnings of mixing their cultural practices of their ethnic tribes with the Amazigh, the Assyrians, and those in northern Iraq. These two historical viewpoints can be true at once, and I want to suggest that participatory advocacy therefore involves 5 key steps: recalling our own history, the recognition of the harm that faith and organized faith and institutionalism has done to many of the people that we now serve in a systemic oppressive way, and the responsibility towards the colonial history of the church, which we represent. I personally work for the Society of Jesus on a process of reconciliation with indigenous peoples. So this is where my viewpoint is coming from. Because I often find that performative advocacy at the level of COP in the UN and even at the UN General Assembly has repercussions of this harm. And this harm turns into violence, which turns into an everlasting consequence of humanitarian scale. When we look at Sudan, Congo, Myanmar, Venezuela, Syria, you see protracted crisis, as we like to call them, but it really is just fissures of colonial harm by several actors that many institutions, both in Europe and in the global north, continue to profit from, quite literally economically. And lastly, how deeply listening and learning and giving credit to the people that we harvest our data from and giving humanity to this conversation is key to actually shaping a future where effective participatory advocacy can be equitable, successful, and productive for those of us who have been silenced. I want to say that I've been on the other side of the coin. I've been a beneficiary. I've had to stand in lines and queues for hours, begging for someone to see me as a human worthy of consideration. And now being on the other side, and especially with these funding cuts, I can see just how hard it is to make life-wrenching decisions. How do we figure out who is worthy of what? How can we say that someone is better off receiving our aid than others? But the reality is that the system is created and sustained by a type of eugenics that has us forced to measure whether or not someone can access life-saving aid as we know it to be. I think that historical and biological honesty through our positionality, and especially with colorism in this industry, can create a space for honesty and spaces of full process of reconciliation and reparation to reestablish trust between affected people and those who hold the decision-making power over their lives. I want to talk straight about how this happens because the European empires, many of them still have colonies. France, for example, still takes taxes from 15 different African countries in order to sustain its economy today, ripping the resources of places like in the past Belgian Congo or Dutch Indonesia, leaving scars such as Shell's oil spills, still displace climate communities today. In the Abya Yala, our brilliance is that now, even though Bogota exists, we have persevered in sustaining our territory. And I believe that this is something that has been possible because people within this space have seen this and have navigated the system to help us recreate what has now been destroyed and lost. So European advocates facing this current scenario, and I'm thinking specifically of the 2024 Migration Pact, I'm thinking specifically of the climate crisis and the state of the UN, where, for example, in the COP, the US can decide to withdraw, leaving all responsibility to the EU to make up for everything that they are now doing. We have to fix what is broken, but we must start by acknowledging that one is not without the other. So social justice is not without ecology. They are one and the same because no one in this room can live without breathing, can live without eating, can live without what sustains us, which is earth. And every single violence that produces these harms, forced migration, sexual violence, are often tied to displacement. And displacement is often tied to the lack of natural resources and conflicts for wanting to control territories that are rich in these resources for the sustenance of the capital system. I think that truth telling, the Caritas in Veritate, that is at the heart of Catholic social teaching, is vital for this. I think that the carve ups of Africa, the partitions of grabbing minerals and oil that we see, have bred poverty amid plenty, just as the Sami herders lose grounds to mining today. I think that the stewardship and participatory advocacy, means that constant reconciliation with these two truths at once can occur for us, the practitioners, before we go out to serve those who we are serving. Advocacy without voices of those who are hit hardest is just performative. We do not need to outsource any more disasters. Our consumption footprint, for example, has jumped 5% for those of us who live in Europe just in the last year, dumping pollution to the global south. I think that it's interesting because I met, before he passed away, we had a meeting with Pope Francis. And I told him, I think that from the start of your papacy to the end of your papacy, things have just gotten worse. And he looked at me and he said, "You're right, but what are we doing to step outside of our comfort zone?" And it's something that I still think about today. So, how can we step outside of this comfort zone? Because if we continue to maintain this system, a system that is failing us and that is failing the people we serve, how can we actually create something sustainable? When I entered this space, my first idea was that I wanted to eventually plant the seeds so that we work our way out of jobs, because it is not normal that we sustain a system of humanitarian need that is global south, global north focused. So basically, we reap the benefits of someone else's demise. And this is how we also make a living. But this structural colonial harm, to what end and to whose benefit? And this is a question that I always ask myself before going to the field. I've had encounters with Caritas in Lebanon where they truly save people's lives. And the people always tell me, until when will we need to live like this? And I have no answer, and I don't think any of us do. But it does not mean that we hold specific truths or the ultimate answers. I think in this way, ecumenism and the acknowledging of multiple ways of doing the work is crucial. How do Indigenous communities want to be treated? What is their viewpoint of what aid is supposed to do for them? In the context of Europe, when we listen to those who are literally human trafficked, such as in the case of Libyans who go by sea and often do not make it to the coast of Italy, how are we accompanying them? How are we enabling them to be the voices of that lived experience, which none of us could even bear to imagine? And those of us who can bear to imagine because we've accompanied those journeys know that many times there are not enough words to talk about that reality. There's not enough words to talk about the men, the women, the children that are sexual slaves in Libya today, that are in a literal slavery dungeon being beat to the core and to the pulp, something that our presidents and our union have signed trade agreements on by sea and by land. How can we advocate for this in a meaningful way, including these voices, including and having this pain heard without tokenizing it, without making it performative, and without using them as a little keychain just to gain funds for the moment? I think that these theological epistemologies that follow the work that we do can inspire a care of existence within a world that is inclusively extractivist. There is almost no reciprocity in the process. And that this human fraternity that we heard so much about during Pope Francis's papacy can be rooted in the acknowledgement of creation and this reciprocal relationship that we have with Earth as something fundamental to continue existing. It has the power to cultivate the peace that we're constantly talking about that we want, but that peace takes work. When we look at how Earth forms rare crystals and minerals, it is through a process of continuous pressure and change, high temperatures, and a lot of discomfort. This should be the same process that we go through because for reciprocity with other living relatives, such as rivers, forests, and soils, need to be expressed with ultimate respect and the recognition of their dignity and the need for their care so that also we can continue living. And I believe that this can transform anybody's heart. We don't need to over intellectualize the conversation. We don't need to constantly bring out data because for every single person that makes up that data, they are somebody else's life. They are somebody else's home. I don't like it when people say, yes, there are over 1 million people displaced. Yes, and within those 1 million is the person that I love most in this world, within the people who died within World War II, your same ancestors who fought for the freedoms that we enjoy today and that are very much at risk. What are we doing to sustain their work? Where is the pressure to get out of our comfort zones? And that's why I believe that an integrated vision for participatory advocacy involves deep listening, learning and giving credit, and accompaniment that empowers people to eventually leave us outside of the conversation, where we are the ones who are conducting the resources, but not taking the main stages to speak for others, because this is also a form of silencing. So, who do we get the data from? How do we treat them? Again, what value do we give to their knowledge and their lived experience? And I don't just mean monetary. We have all been colonized in one way or another by each other. And even after that colonialism has ended, our minds remained colonized, and we still believe ourselves more capable, more knowledgeable, even though those people that we serve have survived things that we have only ever studied in books. And for those of us who hold lived experience, I could never quantify my lived experience in any data. I can never quantify what it is like to lose my dignity to men who want to use my body for their pleasure in order to make me survive on a day-to-day basis in a country that does not see me as a human. I came to this field with a goal to eventually ensure that I can make my way out of it and give my spot to someone else from my community. And I think that although we have many positive examples that could challenge the current process, I believe that we need to change the consultation we have with the people affected, especially in global spaces, ensuring they have seats at the table where decisions about them are made. There must be reciprocity. In many instances, there is not. And the prime example is the fact that the Roman Catholic Church is the biggest non-governmental landowner in the world. The history of dispossession of territories continues to be one of the biggest barriers for reconciliation. What are we doing to hold the same institution that has created our organizations accountable for their need for reciprocity of everything that they preach? Let this be one of the ways in which we begin to embody a spiritual conversion, a mental conversion, and establishing something that actually can hold for the future. In closing, I want to say that we need to move beyond colonial imagination of UN structures, and we need to really question ourselves. When we go out and we listen and we heal together the territory, the people, when we cry with others, when we listen to who we construct as the poor, because we too are poor for failing to recognize the wealth and blessing that we have, for even being able to reach them with our passports, with our easy to grab visas. None of us can exist without Mother Earth. None of us can exist without everything she provides. None of us can have this space and our work without, unfortunately, the existence of the suffering and oppression of others. How can we ensure that in the future, as far away as it may be from now, that we can be the ancestors that are recalled by our descendants as being the change? Because I am only here today because my ancestors decided that they would fight so that someone like me could exist in the future. We must have the same mentality. And I am because they are. So let us carry these teachings of our ancestors who survived World War I, World War II, the fall of communism, the liberation of many territories, the reshuffling of Europe and the existence of countries like Italy, like Spain. Let us learn from our ancestors who deeply understood what it was like to exist in a world where the limits of our humanity began our thought for change, placing the whole as an essential part of stewarding the earth as well as the self, especially in the face of AI. Because yes, we can continue to preach that AI is not going to replace us, but AI is going to replace the water that we need to survive. AI is going to continue using women's bodies as Grok does to continue making of women and of girls elements of sexual desire, human trafficking, and modern day slavery. Again, I want to express my gratitude and my hope that in seeing all of you and learning from all of you in the following presentations, I too can take away learnings and teachings that I can implement in my own work. Because just because I have lived experience doesn't mean that I've finished learning. Until the day I die and expire from this world, I will continue to be learning from practitioners in the field, and we will continue to be battling these realities with the hope that in the future, our descendants can say that what we did was not in vain. Ikwamabie, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for all the truth you say and for your very, very inspiring speech, for reminding us about the importance of revising history and knowing where we come from, and also see possibilities of getting out of our is the space to those who have to have it and who have it, but basically are denied that space and that opportunity. Um, I have no words to add, but I would like to really see if there are questions for you. I really thank you very much for your wonderful introduction to this webinar. I'll be checking the chat. Is there anybody? But please feel free to take the microphone and I mean to unplug your microphone, to plug your microphone. Sorry. If you have any question, anything you would like to, or any comment, or okay, I see in the chats many thank you messages. You you left it without words. A lot of food for thought and reflection. I do have a question, maybe to break a little bit the ice, hopefully. Um, in your experience working on advocacy for in your current position, what do you think is the main challenge when it comes to, giving the space and the voice, bringing the voice of people with lived experience to policymakers? What do you think are the main challenges, and how do you do in your daily work to try to, to break those challenges, basically?
Well, thank you for that question. I think there's several levels to it. So one is obviously, I think that what I mentioned in the beginning, one of the biggest challenges and barriers is that they ask one person from each global South region to come and speak at these global fora. And all of a sudden, we become the spokesperson for entire regions. So I cannot speak for Venezuela. I cannot speak for Mexico. I cannot speak for Argentina, Chile, Bolivia. I cannot speak for that. I don't even feel empowered to speak for the entirety of Colombia, a vast nation with so many different ethnic groups, diversities. We are 115 surviving tribes from the 1500s, all with different cosmologies, ways of thinking, areas where we are in the country. So it's very difficult, it's very difficult when someone asks you to come into these spaces and the first question a policymaker asks, it's almost like a trap. It's almost like they know what they're doing and they tell you, okay, but how much of economy do you know about South America? Like, are you equipped to have this conversation? And my first question is always, did you bring me here to humiliate me, to make me feel less than and more culpable? Or did you bring me because you actually wanted to learn and consult me for something to create positive change in the world? So, you can be in the UNFCCC and be at the highest levels. I'm not impressed by that because the world, since the creation of the UN, has only in many ways gotten worse. And now with all this technocratic positioning and the ability of UN Security Council members to freely withdraw from all of these conventions to safeguard not only the earth, but also social justice and human rights violations is incredible to me. So they still hold the decision-making power at the end of the day to veto things all the time, such as a ceasefire in Gaza, where the genocide has continued for over 3 years. But when it comes to actually bringing us to these spaces, they just want us kind of like a keychain, or they want us to wear our traditional wear and they want to like gawk at us and take pictures with us. But when it comes time to make the decisions and to make the asks, to make the actual difference and to say, we need funding, we need our own circular economies. That is what we need and that is what we want. We want our autonomous territories recognized. Then there is no conversation. Then that is not the place for us to talk about that. And this is a huge issue. Now, parallel to that is being within the church as an indigenous Muslim woman. So obviously, there's a lot that goes into that because people often tell me, how is it to work for, the Jesuits at the Vatican level, knowing the harm also that this same institution has caused? Because, for example, the biggest university in Bogota, La Javeriana, the Jesuit university, is actually built on top of one of our burial grounds. And we've been in talks for many, many years with them about what it would be like to receive that territory back to our community. Imagine us building something on top of any of their gravesites. It would never be possible. This wouldn't be heard of, but it's okay and it's allowed to happen because it's us and it's been normalized. And so I think it's also combating a little bit of I wouldn't say it's just ego, but I think superiority complex that is enshrined in a lot of, for example, the spirituality that is often spoken about, but very little applied. And so I think those two barriers for someone such as myself in these spaces is one of the biggest challenges, is to really enter the conversation not as the advocacy coordinator of the Social Justice and Ecology Secretariat, but as someone who is deeply committed to ensuring that no more women have to live through what I lived through. Because for those of you who have been displaced, for those of you who are immigrants, you know what it is like. Even now, I have a worker's permit in this country, and every time that I come back through the airport, I am treated like a criminal. I am often put in a room. I'm asked where I was, what I was doing, who I was with, who I associate myself with. It's exhausting. Asking for a visa is humiliating. When I'm asked, why should we let you in? Well, why should you let anyone in? Since when? Since when are you allowed to treat people this way? And this is even after receiving all of these accolades, doing a TED Talk, like all of these, I guess you can say, all of these things to fill my CV. But that's still not enough to have my humanity recognized. And I can say this for many of the Ukrainians, Palestinians, Syrians that I've worked with throughout this time. They are seen as less than human. They are seen as whatever geopolitical issue, genocidal and ecocidal issue their territory is facing, and no more. They are not seen as a person with dignity. And so I think this is something that really poses big challenges within these spaces that I occupy.
Thank you very much, Daniela. I don't know if anybody else would like to ask any question to Daniela or to comment anything about from what I've seen in the chat. No. Well, then thank you very much once again, Daniela, for sharing with us your lights, your knowledge, your experience, and your advice. It's been really a pleasure to listen to you, and it's great to have you with us today. Okay, so then maybe let's move on to the next. I'm glad also that you are willing to stay with us also for the rest of the webinar, of course. We're gonna go then to the next slot in our program, which is more like going into good practices, so sharing experiences from the Caritas Europa network on how to make participatory advocacy a reality and some experiences of what works. I would like to welcome Ana Abril from Caritas Spain, who is going to give us an example of how to actually bring people with lived experience in co-designing political proposals in the context of an electoral process. Thank you, Ana.
No, thank you very much for inviting Caritas Spain to be here. After Daniela's speech, well, it's very difficult to speak, and the most current position will be to remain silent. No, so thank you, Daniela. You have said a lot of things directly to the heart, and well, that made me think a lot. So, Eva, I have tried again to share that it doesn't work. So, excuse me because I'm not able to share it. Thank you for your help. Well, what we wanted to share is every time that there is general elections in Caritas Spain, we do a process in order to define our political proposals. That is one of the most strategic process that we have in Caritas Spain, because it's what we are going to say to the political parties for the elections, what we are going to say to the society that are our priorities. And these political proposals are the work of 4 years during all the legislature. Those are the priorities of Caritas Spain. Eva, if you can, please. So, well, the point of departure, I think it's shared by all of us. We think that in the core mandate of Caritas, in our mission, in our identities, to fight the root causes of inequality, poverty, exclusion. That's Catholic social teaching. Everywhere we have to change the root causes that creates exclusion and poverty. And one of the mechanisms is the advocacy work. We try to influence the legislation and to boost a policy change. And we do that with 2 pillars. We try to impact the public policies in order to create common good. That's our goal, that everyone, with anybody excluded of that, has dignity, human rights guarantee, etc., etc. And we think we have to do that, as Daniela said, with the participation of everybody. And the advocacy work is a mechanism for people that normally and sometimes are excluded of the society, and the place. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's possible that the connection is not very well. We have an event outside the office. I'm not there. Is that, yes, is that happening? You don't listen to me well?
I do listen to you well. I
We
have
can
no
hear you
issues.
well.
Okay. Thank you very
Maybe
much.
it's the connection from Maria who made the comment.
Okay, thank you. So we try all the participation where the decisions are taken, where the power is, advocacy as a tool to balance the power relations. Eva, please. Are you seeing the next? Oh,
Wait.
thank you.
Do you see the next one? No.
No, in my case, no.
No, it
Okay.
seems to be blocked there, Eva.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm sorry,
Technology
Eva.
is it's a very
Yes.
useful tool, but it's not
But
perfect.
sometimes, yes.
We know.
Mhm.
Okay. I continue if
Yeah.
you. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, only a very little remark. if Adela Cortina is a Spanish philosopher, no, and she said that building a just society is everyone's responsibility, no, all of us, we are part of building the just society. But if we saw the data, integrated people feels more connected to elections, they go to vote, but people experiencing poverty or exclusion, the feel of disaffection, no? Politicians that don't care about excluded people, so they don't participate. You can see the data, no? Increase when we are speaking about people experiencing severe exclusion. So for us, that is really important, no? They are citizens, they have to participate, and well, there is an history of exclusion, but we try to change that. Please, Eva. So that is how we see the civil society, no? People who feel completely integrated, that welfare state or public policy is a safety net, but for other people, excluded populations, they feel completely distant, irrelevant, disconnected, because public policy, normally the goal is not excluded people. They are not in the center of the public policies. So we try with the process not only to influence public policies, but to sit in the table people who have to be there. Please, Eva. So we do that in 5 phases. When we think there is a call for general elections, 1 year and a half in advance, we start a process with these 5 phases that we are going to see one by one. Eva, if you can, please. The first one, we start with people who are experiencing the violation of their rights. So we ask them, which rights do you have violate in your daily life? And if Caritas can influence some of that, if we try to change some of this vulneration of right, which then would you prioritize? And we do that in an individual way, so they can speak each person, their reality, their life, their situation, and after with a reflection in a group, a collective reflection, in order to arrive to a prioritization. Which rights that are vulnerated do you think are the priority for Caritas in the next legislature? You have the data, the groups, and the participants all over the Spanish territory. The second one is, okay, we have those human rights that are violated. We share also in groups which are the effects, no? You know, the methodology of the problem tree that you see in your life, the effects that are caused by the violation of the rights, and which are the causes of the violation of the right, and we try to find the main cause that is going to be our finally a political proposals. These main causes that are identified in groups in a common reflection are for us the key of the political proposals that we are going to present in the general elections. Please, Eva. The third moment is we have a lot of, no, it's a problem, but the reality is like that, violation of rights in housing and employment. There is no minimum guarantee, women trafficked, people living in settlements, a lot of realities, rural areas. So we did a very big event with the voices of everybody. There were people from Caritas that accompany people, people experiencing poverty around 15 thematic areas. No, I have just mentioned some of them. And we tried to arrive to a consensus to prioritize 8 political proposals. Why 8? Because we want to be very responsible with the process. No, we are not only saying, okay, we want to change those things, and after we forget. It's really a commitment. People experience this vulneration of rights. We really want to do a process in order to change this reality. We have a commitment. We have to prioritize in order to be effective. So we did this event with the participation of everyone in order to have a consensus and prioritize 8 political proposals. Thank you very much, Ivan. Next step, we have to have our institutional approval, but the confederal bodies, Caritas Spain, is a confederation of 70 Caritas dioceses. We present that to the Conference of Bishops in order also to have the institutional approval. And once the document with very concrete proposals in improving changes in public policies, we did a communication strategy. We want to tell the society this is the result. We want those changes to be made, and we ask the politicians to include that in their electoral manifestos. And we did a political interlocution. We asked all the political parties, we want meetings, we want you to include these political proposals which are done with this process in your political programs. And finally, we analyze if we have had some success or not, if the political parties had included the proposals of Caritas. Please, Eva. And the 5th phase is we had to return all the information, accountability to everybody who was engaged in the process. So we did also with the General Secretary of Caritas. We did a call to all the participants in the process in order to say that was the results, because in this distillation process there were only some representation. Something that we have to learn is, people's move, their lives move. 2 years after, no, it was not possible to reach everybody. So that is something that we have to improve for the next time. The next one, please. Well, what we try to do, and we have a lot to learn, to improve, to change, is, a co-design advocacy with the point of the party. If the experience lived by the people, they have to be part of all the advocacy process. We don't want to do research with data. We want to base on the reality, to create a collective empowerment. And that was the groups people said, we feel part of Caritas, we feel part of this organization, we feel part of something wider, that our group, our reality, it's a collective process. And also, and that's something that is like that, but people experiencing poverty, sometimes we make them not feel like that. You are subject of rights. You have also the right to defend your rights, and to defend your rights in a collective way. One by one is very difficult, and sometimes, they think they can be in trouble if they try to defend their rights. But if the collective empowerment has more possibility of success. The next one, please. Everything that was said in the process, we take it into account. For example, during the process, some main causes in the problem tree were directly related with political proposals at the national level. Other ones have relation with competence of the local level or regional level. That was taken into account. Perhaps it wasn't for the general election, but it's going to be for the local elections or regional elections. Or some main causes, there were a lot of reflections. We feel that we are not citizens. We feel that we are excluded. We are discriminated when we try a lot of things in our lives, in our day by day. So perhaps we have to do a campaign. We have to create awareness. Everything that was said in the process were taken into account for the general election or for other processes and lines of work. So to finalize, both things for us are key. We try to influence the police, the society, everyone. We should be subject and build this society that we dream, and we have the process, the target of having 8 rigorous political proposals, and I insist we are working on that for years, 8 years, 12 years, it doesn't mind. We want to achieve those goals, but also we need to rebuild citizenship, creating the sense of participation, of citizenship, and we build all together these political proposals, and everyone, we are part of all the process, no? So to finalize what Pope Francis said, no, he was very hard saying why we do advocacy or political proposals for people in need, vulnerable people, and without them, no? And he was very strong saying people in need, they have proposals, they have creativity, they have ideas, they have to be sitting on the table, as Daniela has said, no? So that is the last image, Eva, that I think it doesn't work really. So that was the end. Thank you for your help.
Thank you very much, Anna. I would like to open the floor now for questions. I see already a question in the chat from Leo Williams. How do you do this strategic distillation very practically? How do you arrive at the consensus?
In this process, some things we didn't know what was going to happen, no? So one difficulty Daniela has said is the representation, the people who represent migrant people, trafficked women, homeless people. Well, it is not easy. We have a lot of to learn. We didn't know exactly how things were going on, but we arrived to the consensus of the prioritization. It was very, I remember homeless people, Spanish homeless people saying, I'm in this situation, housing for me is something really important, but I can see migrant people, the situation they have and the problem when they are in undocumented. So I prioritize that Caritas Spain focus on migration before than in the situation of homeless people. That things like that happen, no? In the also what when we focus there was a different opinion among a woman who have suffered violence with a professional of Caritas, no? And it was a dialogue in an horizontal way with different points of view. And for us, that is part of the process, no? To create and really the environment where we speak and disagree, and finally we find the consensus. We thought a lot about this event, but something happened when we start speaking, listening ones to another's, and we achieved to a final result.
Thank you, Anna. Another question in the chat. Can you elaborate on selecting 15 themes and 990 participants?
Okay, we asked who wants to participate. It was the first time. We didn't know if 4 people will participate in this process or 14, or we didn't know. So we asked, do you want to participate on that? Well, Caritas Spain is working in participation with a lot of challenges. We are at the very beginning, but now we don't think we have a strategy of homeless people. Well, it's homeless people who have to say the reality, what they want for this national strategy that the government is doing. And after, there are the ones who have to measure the impact of this strategy. So we feel that we have to work like that. But in this case, we ask everybody that wants us to be involved so we only ask, we are in this process, that is what we are planning. Do you want to engage with us? And the 15 thematic themes, it's when we saw the problem trees, we could find, okay, this group of people are speaking about housing, are speaking about migration, are speaking about problems with the administration, bureaucracies, barriers in order to have social protection, are speaking. So we could still select 15 issues that were more or less similar, no, in the violation of their rights, in order to try to work around themes.
Thank you, Anna. I'm going to take another question from the chat, and then maybe we will move on to Annie's presentation. Anna IDC is asking, what about inclusion of persons with disabilities, especially those with speech and mobility impairments? Do you have any practical experience or examples
No.
to involve these voices in the process?
No. Really, it is not, well, if it's physical disabilities, there are not so many people in Caritas, no, in those fields, because in Spain there are very, very strong organizations working in this field, and we try to be where we feel that others are not. So I cannot give any answer to that.
Okay, thank you. And the last questions, how many times did you do this process?
Well, first of all, learning for the past, we did some years ago this process only with the people, workers, volunteers, no, in Caritas. After we thought we cannot do things like that. It makes no reason, I think. Well, it's completely, well, Daniela has explained it perfectly. So we have done that in that way in the election in 2022 for the election of 2023. And now elections are expected in summer 2027. And we are just now in the process. We have just finished this first phase with all the people and groups. The first phase that I have said, we are just doing it for second time now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. I would like then to give the floor to Annie to share with us her example and her experience, the experience of Caritas Georgia.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank
you,
you,
my
Annie.
colleagues, for this very interesting presentation. And I will share in just a moment. If you can see my screen.
Yes, we see it. Yeah, you can maybe put it in presentation mode, will be a bit bigger for those who don't see well, like me.
Okay. Before I start, I'll continue the Daniela's status that in Caritas Georgia, we as well believe that advocacy starts from listening. And that's why we have the project Listening Center, which is operating in Georgia more than a year. So it's a very young project. And through this project, we are collecting all the evidence and then we are recreating it to make community feedback and start our advocacy process so that all the voices are heard. Before I will jump to all this process, I want to share one of the cases from our clients. So there was one woman who lives in Tbilisi, Elena, who was 69 years old. Due to her health conditions, she was bedridden, so she could not move. She also had daughter who was living with her, but she also had health conditions. So many times she was hospitalized. During this process, Elena was left without any caregiver, so she needs support. When this case came to Listening Center, our social workers identified the problem. They have visited the home. They have visited all of the institutions which could be responsible about this case. So the process started. The process started from collecting all the data, creating evidence, and then all this information we are packed and went to the state care agency, which operates under the Ministry of the Health. We provided official letters, we had several meetings, and after it, we get a positive response for the home care service. So now Elena has the service. Whenever she's alone, she needs any support, she can use that governmental state service. But at the same time, it wasn't only advocating to be part of the state service, but also it was a very practical level advocacy inside the Caritas Georgia, due to that critical importance for Elena to have the basic needs to be addressed. She was engaged to our humanitarian sub-kitchens. So this is the case to be shown that we do advocacy in the external level as well internal level. I will speak about it later, but this case shows, unfortunately, this is not unique case in Georgia. This is the pattern, how to say, and this shows the systematic gap. And that's how, when our advocacy start, and building this case through to the listening center project. I will present now the advocacy effort we do in Caritas Georgia. But before I will start to present our approach, I will briefly start with the environment in which we operate,
Annie,
because
sorry
yes.
to interrupt you, but we see your presentation more like in the mode that you should see it somehow. It's not in the right yeah, with the timing and very small, the one that is coming next. I think it's in maybe you can try to present it with the normal presentation option.
Just a moment, why that?
If you click below where there are the percentages, it should be.
Okay, so what about now?
Yeah, click
Still?
now again in the presentation mode. No, we only see with your well, never mind. We
If
don't
it
want
doesn't
to.
work, I can try to share it from mine.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Now
now
it
we see
works.
it.
Now
Yeah.
it works.
Now,
Perfect. Great.
oh,
Thank you. Sorry
okay.
for interrupting.
No, it's okay. So yes, the environment should be analyzed like briefly, because right now in Georgia, due to the political situation, the advocacy environment is quite sensitive and increasingly sensitive. The access to the decision makers is unusually limited, and all the governmental processes is so slow. As you know, there is some packages of new legislation. There have been some protests, and so the society is very fragmented. But we still try, as the Caritas Georgia, as the organization who is speaking the voice, who is for the most vulnerable groups, to do our best. So our work requires to be careful, neutral, and technically grounded approach. So because of this, we engage with the governmental agencies and decision makers through the dialogue. And this often happens behind the closed door or with the personal connections. We try to be supporters and to work with system. And we always try to base our approach or our advocacy on evidence. And that's about the evidence, that's how we do it. But before the evidence, I will briefly also speak about the situation, the main problem, why we started the listening center and what we do to advocate. Due to the situation right now, the poverty percentage is reducing, but still more than 80% of population relies on social assistance, and more than 800,000 people depend on state pension. So when people come to us, it should be mentioned that listening center, to address listening center, there is no need to have any state voucher, any state status for vulnerability group. Any person can address listening center. So due to this situation, we already had observed that there are some barriers for people, for vulnerable people, to have access to the governmental state programs, and those are the complex procedures that is like overwhelmed with bureaucracy. It's limited accessibility. Sometimes there are projects which are operating under the governmental budgeting, but there are lack of information under the vulnerable groups, and most of the times the great problem is that all the services are fragmented, so you need to go to the one place and the second place. So we try to manage all of this. So the main issue which was observed, it should be mentioned that it is that the poverty. So for people who are excluded from all those services, is not because they are living under poverty or vulnerable. The main problem is that there is mismatch between the policy design and lived experience. So it makes life harder for people who are already experiencing some hardship. So what about listening center? What we do, it's most of the time acts as the first point of contact, and our social workers start to work on the cases. It is the place where you can have integrated support of social workers, legal team, and psychologists. It should be mentioned that all the full-time, there is only social workers working, but the legal team and psychologists only are included if there is any need of when the clients come. Is that only place where you can come and you will be referred to any place? It's also the place where you have access to your rights and services. And this is the place where we observe the situation, what is happening, because of we are based on the case studies. We have that reporting, monthly reporting period, where you can see the patterns, what is happening, and this gives us the flexibility to play as a bridge to state system and to the people who need to be included in this system. So this is what we do, but this is after the situation last year. I joined Caritas Georgia last year, so when I have worked with this listening center project, we had the insights to update our project. So we started advocacy from the internal project and then went to outside. What happened? We understood that listening, due to all these challenges, it was already mentioned, listening center needs to expand its services. So we adopted new project activities, which are emergency assistance fund, disaster response fund, awareness raising campaign, and awareness raising campaigns are not only for vulnerable groups who are coming to us, how to self-advocate, but also for other broader society to understand that there are this kind of people who need to be heard. So how it should be done, what is the importance of social work in this, and how this community can be included in this process, not only government, but NGOs, private sector, and so on and so on. And other activity which is included in the new project activities is empowerment for participatory advocacy and self-advocacy. So the logic of our work in this project is that cases are collected, then cases are documented, anonymized, and there they are analyzed, patterns are identified, and after this review, the evidence are created, and it's time for action. Time for external way or internal way. So it depends the situation. So how we do our participatory approach, which means from clients to partners. When the client comes to listening center, the first what social workers do is to understand their experience, identify their problems, understand their need and priorities. That's the first point. There will be field visits at home, and like all the documents are packed. After the co-creation process comes, co-creation process means that all the clients are working with social workers to identify best ways to solve those problems which they have. So the next step is to define the step how to reach goal, and somehow have this roadmap how to act. And when this roadmap is on the table, we can go to the last stage, which is participatory advocacy, where we are led, like in case of Elena, or self-advocacy, which is like in case of Manana. Like I will present briefly one more case of Manana, a young woman who is 33 years old and who is lonely mother of three underage child. She lives with her friend because her partner does not help with any kind of financial assistance. The only financial income Manana right now, the time she pointed to us had, it was that state vulnerable pension. But after all this session with our social workers, after that co-creation, co-design process, Manana right now has that is included in the municipal housing system, and she has also access with crisis food service vouchers. All of this was happened not by our social workers. Like good social work, we believe, is that when people need your support, you are right there. But there is sometimes that you need to step back and give them the time and to do it by themselves. So there were the empowerment come. So Manana, we helped to create all this package with them, but then she applied with this. Then she took all of steps by herself, and the result was positive. So we believe that this is the good picture how from client to partner treatment could give you more sustainable outcome. After this process, Manana even applied to other NGOs to have some financial support for her children, so for empowerment to her trainings, and so on and so on. So that's how, like, it's one kind of advocacy participatory where we are leading and we are like the people who are speaking under the voices of vulnerable groups. But the second one is self-advocacy empowerment, where people are doing it by themselves. We are just showing them the road how to do it. So how we do, like as in this process, there is so important that evidence is insightful and how we collect our evidence. It's like documents which are standardized. So our social workers has one kind of standard document where they are collecting all the data, and these tools are used by all of them. It's general. So then we ensure that they are aggregated and anonymous because of like data security. Of our because we have also internal policy of data security storage, and it's ethically managed, of course. And after it is generated, and this gives us evidence to start the advocacy process. So how the advocacy is in practice, as in Caritas Georgia has dual rule due to the government because we are service providers in some services. So it's actually funded by government, but Caritas Georgia is providing those services. So that's where we are helping to beneficiaries directly. But on the second point, we are actors who are identifying all those gaps and trying government to help improving the process. This is happening mostly by the program managers who are part of task groups. Like right now, we are waiting for government to initiate those task groups because of this fractural situation. But before, it was very, very tense cooperation. And we are like sending them letters, sending them opinion letters, and waiting what can be done. But as I said, credibility is most of important, and Caritas Georgia is operating more than 30 years. So we are quite credible, and when we give some advice, it could be heard because we are working on ground. Like all the information gathered by us is from the field workers, which is then generated. So also, as I have already mentioned, it occurs on two levels, internal and external level, but advocacy in practice in Caritas Georgia is integrated into our daily work. But what is the most important that our approach for the advocacy is quiet diplomacy. technical dialogue, and solution-oriented engagement. We never start advocacy process without the strong evidence, but with evidence, we give them as well assessments of situation and how it could be solved. Right now, because of all this case-based advocacy, several months ago, we created advocacy guidelines, which right now is under reviewing process. And what our advocacy guidelines do, it defines principles and ethics that advocacy should be neutral, ethic, and based on the approach of do not harm. It should be, of course, evidence-based, and data must be managed according to our internal documentation of safeguarding, consent form, data security as well. We have strictly written advocacy circle, and here you can see what I mean under the advocacy circle. And also we have defined the roles. What should social workers do as a field workers? When they bring all these cases and the patterns are already generated, advocacy working group is involved. After involving advocacy, who is part of advocacy working group? After involving advocacy working group, where the solution they have goes, and what is done by program managers, and how the director as a final decision maker acts. And there also identified the advocacy tactics, how it should be done, and as well there are some sensitive advocacy topics which should be discussed and analyzed separately, because of it maybe not be pattern and might not be very common, but it could be so sensitive and important that it should be addressed right in the place. And the last is that these advocacy guidelines also provides a practical advocacy roadmap for the field workers and social workers, how to act in each situation. Yes, that's what ensures the consistent, credible, and safe engagement of our clients. And right now, due to that process we all discussed, we have ongoing research, which we believe will help us to go from the case level advocacy to the more system level, because this is the research which is mapping all the state services across the country and selected municipalities, which means that after this research, we will have the clear referral roadmap, understanding which program is financed by government, where, and we will have the evaluated information, what of them works and what of them are only on paper. So we will have seen very clear where to start our advocacy work and how to include our clients into it. And also this research will identify challenges which are faced by the client during the referral process. We have identified those on the field level, but this research will identify more broader and one. So after this, we will have the clear vision, and we will have that, like we could, after this, plan more targeted interventions. And we hope that after presenting those findings with the governmental representative, it will help us to accelerate process of advocacy more. So to conclude my presentation, that as we have seen, the real changes come from the consistent field engagement, it comes for the field engagement, structural evidence, and constructive dialogue. But in this situation like us, in complex environments, it requires to be patient, to be credible, and to have always practical solutions, because all the systems should understand that we are working with them, not against them. But the core of our work is participation and listening, which we believe that this listening can be turned to experience into evidence, which is most credible way to gain the change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie. I would like now, we have just 4 minutes left, but I would like to see if there is any colleague who would like to ask Annie any question. Thank you for sharing your experience at Caritas Georgia.
There are some questions, Eva, in the chat also from
Also
before.
from before as well,
Yeah.
from to Anna as well. So one of the questions is, how do you make sure people participate? Wait, because the chat is moving. As as I can imagine, they have many other priorities and things to deal with. There's a question for Annie and Anna. And yes. Okay, Anna already replied in the chat, I see, but I don't know if Annie would like to comment on that as well.
Yeah, about the prioritization, due to the situation that all of our work is case-based, and as I said, there are some cases which are not advocated like simultaneously. We are waiting to create some patterns because to see that is it a unique situation or this is reoccurring and repeating, so that we understand how to approach advocacy, because the approach for the individual case needs to be approach differently, maybe empowered by the self-advocacy, and they can do it independently. But if there is a pattern, it should be approached by the systematic level of the Caritas Georgia work.
Thank you. And there was another question from Tom, but this was for Anna. Do you share the information with Vox, with the far right
Yes.
political group in Spain?
Caritas Spain, our approach, no, that I think we can have different opinions and it will be nice to share them, but is with all the political groups that are in the parliament and can be, well, and now are at the regional level in the government, in the autonomous communities. We have a dialogue with all of them. So all our political proposals are sent to all the groups, all the political groups, and we try to have meetings and dialogue with all of them.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, we have 1 minute, and I would like to take that opportunity to thank you all for your great contributions, for this very interesting exchange. As of course, as the speakers, for taking the time to prepare your inputs and for being here with us until the end. And of course, to those who asked questions and made the webinar more interactive. And I would like to take also the opportunity to let you know that Caritas Europa is organizing a webinar on the 27th of May on Beyond Growth and the UN roadmap and how to use it for advocacy. This relates a lot as well to the input that Daniela gave on how to make systemic change effective and to also not to lose the importance of that, of like that we can have like small battles on different areas, but that we also have to do something about the problems that the system itself has. So I would like to invite you to join us in that webinar. I think Eva already, I know Luisa already added it to the chat. Thank you very much. And we are also organizing, as part of this group of advocacy leads of Caritas Europa, an event in Rome on 23rd, 24th of June. It's going to be a policy and advocacy leads forum. And for those interested, please reach out to me. There are still a few seats available. And to confirm that our next webinar will be on the 16th of October on the topic of innovation in advocacy and how to embrace new tactics and approaches for making our advocacy more effective. So thank you so much, all of you, for your inputs and for making this event possible. And you will hear back from us, as I said. We will follow up with an email asking you as well to give us your feedback to how to improve actually events in the future. Thank you, and I wish you a very nice rest of the day and see you all soon.